Hey everyone, welcome to the Human Cloud Podcast, the spot where leaders come to move the future of work forward. Now today we have Tim Condon, CRO at Clutch. Clutch is one of the leading services marketplaces. Now here's why I'm so excited for you to hear this episode, and that is our industry. I feel like one of our biggest debates is what exactly are we? Are we a marketplace? Are we platforms? Are we literally just staffing with freelancers instead of full-time or contractors or temp to hire? What in the world are we? Now, if we want to be a marketplace, then Clutch is an incredible comparable. Now, not to get too nerdy and geeky, but as a total techie, I think a lot of marketplaces are literally just a little bit better than Craigslist. Now, I've said that, don't freak out at me. I'm sorry for anyone building a marketplace. But with that said, there is very unique dynamics in that the talent space, it generally doesn't work if we're just a marketplace. What I mean by that is the best platforms, they usually do look like an agency or consultancy with freelancers as the execution. Specifically, they usually are helping the clients actually build out the job specs or job descriptions, helping with the sourcing, helping with managing, helping them with workforce planning. It looks a lot more like a partnership and that typical consultancy hierarchy, meaning the partner or principal, followed by the managers and the execution and the working teams. So, with that said, I gave you a lot of mumbo jumbo and a lot of terms. What I want to hear from you after this episode is, what do you think we are? Are we a marketplace industry? Are we a platform industry? Now, I want to give you one final piece of data, and that is it can be contextual based off of your region and your geography. So, for example, if you're in the Middle East or Saudi Arabia, marketplaces are a lot more buzzy and trendy than, say, in the US. Likewise, if you're in Spain, actually, marketplaces is still a little trendy and buzzy. Where in the US, I don't mean to be kind of mean, but you're probably going to get laughed out of the building if you say, hey, we're a freelance marketplace, and you're on the enterprise buyer side. So, because marketplaces, we know they still need that human, that very relationship-driven touch. Now, don't get too mad at me, but after the episode, I want you to tell us, what do you think we are? So, without further ado, sit back, enjoy, and then most importantly, go drive some change. Real quick, before we get started, have you checked out Human Cloud's industry landscape? Now, I know we use this word freelance, right? What we're really talking about is a massive industry where the supply, the individuals, are self-employed. But there's actually over 800 global platforms, and there's been over 100 platforms added this year alone. Now, within platforms, every platform isn't the same. There's large horizontal platforms, there's niche vertical, and every day there's a new niche vertical platform. Whether it's a platform for gaming talent, whether it's a platform for shoe designers, whether it's a platform for oil and gas engineers in Malaysia, you name it, there is a platform for it. And there's more than platforms. There are these things called hybrid agencies. There is freelance as a service. There's business to freelancer tools like Collective and Wethos. There's freelance communities, there's onboarding tools, there's providers, there's freelance management systems. Everything is included in Human Cloud's industry landscape. So go hop over to humancloud.work and check out that landscape. All right, enjoy the episode. All right, Tim. Well, thanks for hopping on. Hey, I'm going to give you the full context, okay? So I found Clutch about, 6 months ago, right? And I first looked and I went, damn, this is pretty cool. And I'm not gonna lie, my first thought was, all right, this looks like maybe some bullshit data, let me crawl through and see if it's another public scraper.
Yeah.
And then I kept going through and I'm like, oh my God, this is insanely powerful. And so about 3 months ago, I probably reached out to everyone in your team, Tim, saying, we need to talk, right? Like every good entrepreneur. And we're here, right? And so I just want you listeners to know, I think this is one of the sexiest, most exciting potential solutions in the freelance economy. I'm so excited to learn more. And so, without further ado, Tim, welcome to the pod.
Thanks, man. Really happy to be there here. So, Tim Condon for you guys. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at Clutch. Joined about 2 years ago. We didn't actually talk about this. I joined about 2 years ago. Clutch, it's about 10 years old, believe it or not. But really has blown up in the past, call it 3-ish years, probably alongside the freelance economy as it's sort of gotten more and more remote, more and more global. We're a global marketplace for people to find professional services firms, and just a really cool little niche. And when sort of I got approached to join, I'd never heard of it, and then I started doing my research, and I was like, oh my god, this is like a niche that like is just sort of hanging out there that nobody's really figured out. So I was enamored with Clutch, and I was like, all right, well, I'm coming on board if you need somebody to help out.
Yeah, I love it. Could you give us a little overview on Clutch? So you mentioned 10 years. I was trying to look and I actually couldn't find any like funding information, things of that matter,
Yeah,
which is usually a good thing, which means
yeah,
your founders were building for actual value, not just as a hype machine.
yeah,
But yeah, give us an overview on
yeah.
Clutch.
It's a great story. So the founder, Mike, he started about 10 years ago. He always says to me, I had no idea it would get this big. He really didn't, and he operated as if it wasn't going to get big, and so he operated very, very lean, right? He was, but he has this philosophy that you always have to build for the buyer, right? And so when you go on Clutch, you see the reviews are really in depth, right? We will get on a call and take a review over the phone and then transcribe it into a review on the site, right? Everything gets verified because he believes that like you've got to be able to come and trust the content, right? And then the information about the service, the service providers, is so in depth, right? And provider, you can go in and like tell us exactly what services you do, and then what sub services you do, and then what industries you serve, and then and so it's just such an in depth. It goes so much deeper than sort of the surface level. So we get about a million visitors a month, B2B buyers. We cover marketing services, like IT and development services, and then a whole bunch of others. We just sort of lump into what we call business services, but it's literally anything from accounting firms to trucking firms to any kind of sort of service business that you can imagine. You can find on Clutch.
Interesting. And we talked a little bit about numbers, but you mentioned, there were some numbers around freelancers, 2 to 10 person firms. What's the breakdown of
Yeah,
like solopreneur versus 2 to 10 person versus 10 to 100?
yeah.
What's some of the breakdown of and what do you call them, by the way, Tim? Do you call them service
We
providers?
do. We call service providers are the ones offering services, and then buyers are the people coming to sort of engage. So I did look at it. I looked it up before. So we have about, I don't know, call it 340,000 providers listed on Clutch, and that is all over the world, right? So it's not we're not just U.S. based. As a matter of fact, I don't know, 30-40% of our business is international, and uh, companies can define themselves, right? And so we have sort of company size as a thing. So this is all self-reported by the service provider. Um, of the 340, about 12,000 identify as a true freelancer, and then 166,000. So half of the total are 2 to 9 person companies. Again, that's how they identify, right? We don't.
Yeah.
We actually will do some checking. We'll check against LinkedIn to make sure that they're not sort of like completely off base.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, there's not really a high incentive to lie about that.
Yeah, of course. And you find out real quick, right? And from the buyer side, I mean, this is where one of the avenues we're going to go down is like, how come you didn't just say let's be a freelance marketplace, right? Like that's gonna be one of my sort of deep seated questions in the background. But so from a buyer's perspective, right? Like you are a B2B service provider platform. What does the buyers look like? Is this enterprise, small businesses, startups, everything?
Yeah,
Is this just domestic? Is this like what
yeah,
does the buyer
yeah,
side look like?
yeah. That's a great question. So uh, uh, we we do a bit of research on our buyers, but we don't actually make our number one action from the buyer is to go off of Clutch and visit the service provider's website. And so we
That was
actually,
one of my questions.
yeah, so we actually don't. So we capture some buyer registrations, but we don't emphasize that, right? We want to get them to the service provider as quickly as possible. But we do surveying, and so what we find is we find that uh, most of our buyers are small to medium sized businesses. That's actually our bread and butter. And we'll get some enterprise, like we've got stories of companies who've gotten jobs from Google, from Amazon through Clutch. But I mean, those companies also have like approved supplier programs and all the other stuff, right? Which should be huge hurdles, right? Our bread and butter is the small to medium sized business that needs a marketing agency, needs some development work, needs, and nobody knows that they exist or that they need a job, right? Like you can't find these people just, through normal marketing channels because their needs are typically time based, right? Like, oh, I'm doing this thing. I need somebody who can help out, right? Do graphic design work, that sort of thing. So that's where we come in because we're sort of easily the largest platform to find stuff. And to answer your question, so why we didn't just become freelance? I don't think that I don't. If Mike was here, I bet he would say it was not a conscious decision. It was sort of like hey, you know what?
What the buyer is.
Let's just make it available and see what fits. And what ended up happening was, like half of the companies are in that 2 to 9 space, right? Because they need someplace. And Clutch is not just great for generating leads; it's also great for online reputation, right? A place to house your reviews, right? If you've got somebody and they're like, well, tell me about your business, right? Now you can point to Clutch and say, look, well, here are the 50 reviews that I've gotten from my clients, right? So it's sort of a place where they can, because most of our companies, they just put a free profile on and that's all they ever do on Clutch, right? And it's a place where they can manage their online reputation. And if they're talking with somebody, they can say, oh, just check out my Clutch profile. You can see the work I've done, right?
Yeah. And I wonder, like, let's get deep into the service based business because I think this is something that, what's one of the quotes where it's like, America runs on entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And part of me wants to like rechange that quote to be like, America runs on small service based businesses
Yes.
because increasingly, right, like we're no longer just an industrial powerhouse, right? Like that's not us. We're
Yeah.
increasingly a knowledge work powerhouse internationally from a US lens and service-based businesses like that is our modern day entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
So but how would you describe the change in service businesses probably for over the last like 10 years?
Yeah. 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 So it's interesting. I would say a couple of things you notice. Obviously, the pandemic, really shifted everything to, most of our clients. When I visit with our clients, I'm visiting them in coffee shops, right? Like they don't have offices; they're fully remote, right? They are a distributed organization, and many of them were heading in that direction already, but it's very clear now that that's the direction a lot of these service based, even the bigger ones are sort of more distributed. Um, and uh, definitely more international in nature, both who they hire and who they serve. I was telling you on the pre-show about a client I visited recently up in New York City, and met him at a coffee shop, right? And
Yeah.
he's SEO agency, and he was telling us about his business, and he's basically a one-man show that has 15 contractors and they're from all over the world, right? And he's just the guy, right? He was working at an agency and he was like, I could do this and not have a boss, right? Like and he just sort of like pulls together his resources and and operates basically out of his apartment. I mean, it's just it's an interesting space.
And let's I kind of want to dig deep into this concept of impact. I think is an overwhelming thing, and I'll give you a little context why. So when you look at data on what do freelancers actually care about, you would assume that they would care about the freedom, right? And I get to work where I want, when I want. You'd think that was it. Now, when you dig deeper into the data, you have to start to slice by high earning freelancers or experienced freelancers and not. And the problem is like 90% are not the high earning freelancers. But you dig deep into the ones that are doing really, really well. They plan to be freelancing for the rest of their career. And honestly, they look no different than you, Tim. They look no different than me. They look like an executive that's choosing to be independent. But the leading driver for them is impact. And they'll say things like, I couldn't make as much of an impact full time as I can doing this,
Yeah,
right? And I probably would. I'd be a VP if I was full time, but I can make more of an impact doing this. When we talk about, like, okay, Clutch, you guys probably have the best visibility into what's driving these service based businesses, what's driving the impact that they're making. I mean, what do they look like? What do
yeah,
they care about?
yeah,
What really moves the needle for them? What impact do they make?
yeah,
I just kind of want to fall in love with
yeah,
these service
yeah.
based businesses you're talking about.
It's funny. You just reminded me of a story. Uh, Another one of our clients, a much bigger business now, but he was telling me the story about how he got started, and he got started building websites in his dorm room, right? And he was like, I didn't want to work for somebody. I knew that I could I could just do this myself. And then he said, and started working out. And so he hired some friends, right? And then he was basically like, and then my friends, were like, well, what? I want to manage people now. And he's like, I just got forced into building this big business, right? But like, he just wanted to do his thing and help businesses out and build cool websites for them and help them with SEO. And it just, it morphed into this way bigger, monster and he was actually, today he doesn't even really operate in the business, right? He's just like, I'm just sort of, they run by themselves at this point, right? But I agree. He was sort of like, hey, look, I can just do things instead of being a cog in a wheel. I'd rather just help the small business, operate their business, and instead of just being at some big company and taking a salary. So yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's just about freedom. I think it's about like I can do like more good for clients,
Yeah.
doing it myself as opposed to just being a cog in the wheel.
Yeah. And I wonder, so one of the topics I want to get into is I want to dig deep into the challenge of these service-based businesses. It looks good on the surface, right? Hey, I can be my own boss, all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
We all know it's really effing hard, which is why
yes,
most of us, most people stick to the corporate path.
yeah,
Um, let's dig deep. Like, what do you hear and here's actually one of the reasons that I'm so pumped to hear from you is like, you you have to know this because
yeah,
if you don't, you would have had the wrong roadmap, which would have built things that they didn't want. And you
yeah,
might say something, but it's not true. But so what you tell me, it better be true
yeah,
because your roadmaps have to be true as these people are paying.
yeah,
So what are the top challenges that you're seeing from your service-based businesses?
yeah. So I think this is so interesting. The thing I hear over and over again, especially ironically from marketing and development companies, um, they're so busy working for others that they can't actually build out the things that they need to like help themselves, right? So like things like building a good landing page to convert somebody coming from Clutch, like they're like, I know I should do it, I do it for my clients, right? I just don't have time or the resources to do it, right? And so that is a theme that I hear over and over again, especially with small 5-10 person companies. They it's sort of like the with the old saying that the cobbler's kids have no shoes, right? Like so we hear that a lot, that and so that actually falls on us, because we want them to be successful in Clutch. So we actually have started building out landing pages for our clients so that we can help them do the things that they should do and just don't have the resources or time or expertise to do. So that's a big one. I would say, I mean, the world is changing really fast, right? And so we deal with a lot of companies that either, um, SEO is a big part of what they sell, right? They're selling SEO services, or it's a big part of like how they generate business. And so all of the changes now, like, geared towards AI and, how, Google's changing everything, like that's a big challenge for all of our companies, right? Some of them are seeing their clients say, I don't want to pay for SEO anymore because I don't think it's going to be as relevant. And then you get others that are sort of saying like, why, like, I can't even get, benefit from SEO anymore. So that's a big one that, I think is uh, it's unclear how it's going to shake out, but it's affecting a lot of our businesses.
It's really interesting when looking at that. So it's a common thing across platforms, across individuals. I mean, let's face it, right? Like our website right now is probably 3 months behind where it
Yeah,
should be.
yeah,
And then in a
everybody's
day, it's probably 6 months, right? So
yeah,
like I
yeah,
fully get it.
yeah,
It's part of the consulting part that sucks, right? Is like
yeah.
you're better at what you do for things for clients than yourself.
Right.
But um, but I wonder like what are some of the when looking back, what are some of the real changes that you think enabled Clutch? Because you keep mentioning that 10 years old, but 3 years ago it really popped, right?
Yeah.
And we had this massive pandemic that made remote possible. So, but what were some of the things like? So, remote is one of the things. Would you say like great resignation drove? Like, what are some of the waves that you've seen in the past,
Yeah.
let's say 5 years?
Yeah. Yeah. I think a couple things. One, I mean, everything online, right, during the pandemic sort of, blew up a little bit, right, to a certain extent. But the whole concept of remote work uh, for employees, then sort of translates to, well, if I'm okay with a remote employee, I'm okay with a remote contractor, and I'm okay with a remote freelance. So my take is, um, it it it. The idea of sort of like outsourcing, if you will, certain tasks, and using sort of fluid labor, if you will, right, as opposed to set employees that are sitting in your office, right? Like the whole mindset around that just definitely seemed to change, right? And whether you're using a big firm or a small firm, probably doesn't matter as much. But the idea of like saying like, hey, do we really need this resource in house? That definitely seemed to be a big change that's happened over the past several years.
Gotcha. So you would say that that shift to which it's funny in our space. People always want like that aha answer,
Yeah,
like oh it's magic, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
listen, I started in SF, right? Like so
yeah,
I was the king of as tech heavy as you can get.
yeah,
And there was some wows there.
yeah,
There
yeah,
was some wow, this
yeah,
is a masterful AI application. Wow, stupid terms like Kubernetes and all these things that you would just go, okay, that's magic. Our space, I'm always overwhelmed by how simple it is.
yeah,
And there's this quote, it was by, so the US Army has this freelance marketplace called Gig Eagle. It's
yeah,
pretty cool, right? Like our own army has their own freelance marketplace.
yeah,
Pretty cool. It's called Gig Eagle. And the leader of it, Air Force General, I remember he asked me this question because he was like, "What do you think of the name?" I'm like, "I think it's terrible. Like, I think it's 6 years behind, and I hate it." And he was like, "Thank you, for that." He goes, "But here's my challenge to you." He said, "Is this with the space? Is it actually new, or is it just new to you? Meaning, people, there's just not this overnight awareness of what
yeah,
exactly we're talking about." And I think we struggle from that
yeah,
massively. And so when you mention that companies simply being okay with things not in house.
yeah.
It's so funny because is that radical? No,
No,
no.
no,
It's a simple little change.
yeah,
Now, as you're looking forward, Tim, what, where do you see the world? And this is a massive question, because I think it's going to start to hit on when we talk about AI, right? And like we're starting to get into a little bit of that theme. But where to Clutch, where do you see the world? Do you always want to be a, I'm going to call it a one-sided platform, just in that, like you mentioned, the service providers, they're the ones, and they're the ones paying, right? So the
Yep.
service
Yep.
providers are paying, they're the main customer.
Yep.
Are you always going to be that? Do you want to be a freelance marketplace? Do you want to integrate with other freelance marketplaces? Do you want to talk with VMSs, MSPs? Like what? Where do
Yeah.
you see the future going, and where do you all want to play?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. I think, it's obviously like, when you bring in AI, it's a question we spent a lot of time thinking about, right? Because as a business that is based on, giving advice to, people making decisions, AI is either a massive benefit to us or a massive threat, right? So it just depends on how it shakes out. So I think as we think about the future, uh, we do think about it pretty simply. We just want to, like, while service providers are the paying customer, we also know that ultimately the buyers of those services, if we don't provide them a great product and a great offering, then we won't have a business, right? And so, and this goes back to sort of what Mike, the founder, said to me at one point. He said, "Look, he said you always have to build for the buyer. You always have to, think about the buyer first. And if you do that, it doesn't matter if it's Google or some other AI thing, or so, they're all like they all care about the buyer, if you will, right? Their searcher, and they're going to want to steer them to the best place for the answer. And so we have to be the best place for the answer for that buyer always. And if that means the world shifts more to true freelancers, right? We've just got to make sure the platform is set up so that people can, it's easy for a freelancer to say, hey, this is a good spot for me, right? And even if it's, hey, this is a good spot for me to just manage my reputation, right? Just house my reviews, showcase my projects, right? So we're sort of agnostic, and I think a good marketplace does that. Is that we're saying, hey, we will go where the buyers and the sellers tell us there's the most value.
Well, shifting topics, right? Like digging digging into the wins. When you think about Clutch, what would you say are like the proudest wins? Is it seeing service providers grow their revenue? Is it seeing service providers get noticed when they never could?
Yeah,
Like, what are some of the biggest wins? I know you mentioned like that 15-person SEO, was it 15-person
yeah,
SEO shop
yeah,
in
yeah,
New York,
yeah,
in New York City, right?
yeah.
What are some big wins like that? Yeah,
Yeah, so we,
yeah.
we have a client out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I'm sure they won't mind if I use the name. Their name is WebFX. They do a lot of marketing services, and I we went up there probably 6 months ago to chat with them, and they're a big client of ours, and they were sort of rehashing. They they started about 10 years ago, and they found Clutch almost immediately. And it's remarkable as they talk about how they've grown, and they've basically grown up with Clutch, right? And it's they look at us and say, like, there's a symbiotic relationship between us and them, and that they've literally built their business off of working with Clutch, and that's really cool, right? Because they started as a tiny little business. They had aspirations to get bigger. They're now an enormous business, and they basically give Clutch credit for helping them grow and build their business out of Harrisburg, PA, as a marketing shop. So those are the kind of stories that are really cool to hear, right? And we hear them all the time. That both from folks who have been with us for a long time, and then folks who have just discovered Clutch. So it's just really cool because all you talked about it. It's like it is really hard, right? I've not done it. I've not built a business from scratch, right? I'm in awe of the people who have the guts to go out there and say, I'm just going to go out on my own and do it, right? And so knowing that we're helping them and helping them sort of like find their way, that is really cool. Those are the big wins for us.
Yeah, and let's, if we could, I mean, the beauty is, I'm going to call you non-technical. I
Yeah,
apologize.
that's right.
I'm also
It,
okay.
it fits, yeah.
As we do talk about AI,
Yeah.
right? Everyone's talking about it.
Yeah.
What does it mean for y'all? What is it really going to change? What are the challenges of it? I mean, you mentioned briefly like it could get rid of us, it could
Yeah.
put us in a really good place.
Yeah.
But like, how are you defining AI within this space?
Yeah.
And yeah, let's just over to
Yeah.
you, two non-technical idiots.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do
Exactly.
you think of AI?
Yeah. We and we've done a lot of internal thinking about this. I think so. I'll talk about from Clutch and then from our client standpoint. So from Clutch's standpoint, we believe that we're actually in a really good position because we have breadth and depth of data on so many companies that nobody else has. And ultimately, while there's some threat, we own that data and we can control that data. And much like it's helped us in SEO, we expect it to help us in however the AI world shakes out because people need advice. We have data that nobody else has. We ultimately think we'll be in a really good position. We just have to be smart about how we think about what data we're willing to share and how we share it and what we expect to get back from it. But having proprietary data is probably like you're probably in a good position in an AI driven world. I don't believe that anybody's going in sort of the near future that people are going to just trust AI without doing a little bit of research, right? So I think AI is going to help point them in the right direction. But if you are you going to hire a marketing agency and spend $200,000 without doing a little bit of research? Probably not, right? You got a boss that you got to answer to. You probably want to know. So we don't worry too much from that standpoint. But what we love is the ability of AI to help Clutch, right? So one of the things we've done, like we have providers that have 300 plus reviews on Clutch, like it's impossible for somebody to go through and like literally look at all those reviews and then sort of like pull out the themes and understand. So we've actually started using AI to pull out themes from the reviews so that you can get to a company page and you can read the reviews, or you can read sort of like, hey, what are the reviews really telling you about this company, right? What do they really specialize in? What do they do well? What do they not do well?
Yeah.
So that we're really excited about that. We've also got a tool that will allow you to come to the site and say, I'm looking for this type of project, and we'll help you sort of build out the whole sort of proposal, right?
Yeah.
And with a few questions, and then we sort of pre-seed it, then you can edit it, right? And then it just helps you when you're working with a service provider that you can be much more precise in what you're asking them for, and they can be much more precise in sort of like how they quote you and what they can do,
Yeah.
and then we can be more precise in saying, here, if this is what you want, here are the companies that are actually really good at it, right? So,
What would you call that first one, Tim? Like
oh,
summarization,
yeah, so we call it our insights.
insights. Okay.
Yeah,
There's got to be a better word, Tim. You're
I
gonna kill
know,
me for
I know,
saying that,
I
but
know.
because it's especially as you talk about experienced service providers,
Yeah,
you end up having like 30 plus reviews, and then one of the toughest parts about these marketplaces and networks is most of the data is crap. And
yeah,
so when I was I won't say the name, but we were looking at in around 2018, we were looking at acquiring multiple different freelance platforms. And
mm,
the idea was we had the largest social work network, we
yeah,
had the largest uh, global productivity software stack, and we had the largest developer ecosystem.
yeah,
So, hell, let's just go acquire a freelance platform, right? Put it all together.
yeah,
But the reality was the data was such crap
yeah,
on all sides in
yep,
terms of freelancers were saying they're this, well, they're not, right? Freelancers
yeah,
saying they have 100 of this, or they're really actually
right,
one.
right,
There's been 100 plus reviews. Well, actually, only two of those reviews are real.
yeah, yeah, right,
So, right. So there's got to be a word, but I think that that makes it clear, right? In terms of, hey, you can cut through the noise on the
yeah,
buyer side. Um, how much? I mean, how do you make sure you're lock in step with the buyers? It's such an interesting
yeah,
dynamic because the buyers aren't paying you, right? To your point,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
doing something that's, I would say, insanely ballsy in
yeah,
terms of you're giving up the ownership of the end client, meaning the buyer.
yeah,
Uh, but to your point, this so good to the service providers. But so
yeah,
how do you balance this
yeah.
buyers?
Well, I sort of have this phrase in Clutch and elsewhere, which is the tough thing about a marketplace is every decision you're making, you're trading off one side or the other, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
every time you take a dollar from a service provider for some benefit to them, it gets a little bit worse for the buyer. And every time you do something that's really good for the buyer, it gets a little worse for the service provider, right? So it's a really tough. We actually are very intentional about that balance, and making sure that we are finding that right balance, right? Because the ideal perfect market for a buyer has no dollars involved, right? Like that just can't work, right? And so, but I think we understand that at the end of the day, the buyer has to walk away with value, right? They have to come here and be able to find the right provider for their project, right? Which means we have to make sure that they can easily they have a good way of saying, okay, this is my project. Here's what I need, and then we have to be able to surface the providers that are most likely to be. And so, honestly, it's a lot of trial and error. Like we created this one product, and we call it Smart Match, and we thought it was like awesome because you could pick all these little things, and you could do like, and it was just way too complicated, and nobody used it, right? And so like we scrapped it, right? I mean, it's still there, but it just doesn't get so like. Sometimes you just get it wrong, right? But the best way to do it is to try things, test it. The buyers will tell you pretty quickly if you got something, right? And if you don't, you just move on.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. Listen, if you had one message, and you can either address it to the buyers, meaning the companies that need to just get over needing to have people internal go through their vendor process, or the service provider, what would be that one message you would say to each?
All right, so to each. So, I think if I'm talking to the buyer, I'm saying if let's use a marketing agency for example. If you're hiring a Madison Avenue marketing agency, if you're that kind of company that can do that, like Clutch isn't really for you, right? But if you can't, which most companies can't, and then you've got a boss that you've got to answer to, right? So you got to hire the right firm, right? You need depth of information to make sure you're making the right decision. And that's where we try to specialize is providing real deep information so that you can make the right decision for the project and the company that you are. And then for the service provider, right? It's I think I said it earlier, right? There are thousands and thousands and thousands of small companies out there looking for service providers. Like there's no way to identify who they are. And so we try to do a really good job of being that matchmaker. So that you as a service provider don't have to spend a ton of time thinking about how my marketing, like figuring out Google ads or Facebook ads or any of the other places that you might try to LinkedIn ads, right? That's our we try to be that simple matchmaker so that you don't have to think about anything else.
Gotcha. I love it. All right, Tim, most important question is where can our listeners find you?
Yeah. So all right, I'm on Twitter as at TP Condon. You can find me on LinkedIn. I don't really do Facebook, but I'm on Instagram as Tim_Condon. But Twitter or LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me.
I love it. Tim, thanks so much for hopping on, bud.
Awesome. Thanks, man.